9:01, so I'll call the meeting to order. We have 3 timed items today. As soon as we get through adopting the agenda, minutes of pecuniary interest, we have a delegation from SCORE. Then at 9:30, we have a zone change, and 11:15 timed closed session for somebody to dial in. Couple of brief announcements. One, as of today, or I guess as of midnight, Paul Mitchell is deputy mayor for the remainder of this term, for the next year, the remainder of this term at council. So congratulations, Paul, and thanks. And thanks to outgoing Deputy Mayor Steve McDonald, especially for the last meeting that you had to chair in my absence. It's appreciated. And we'll get to the bylaw later on, but to anybody who hasn't met Diane, Diane's second day now as Director of Finance at Township of Zorra. If you guys haven't had a chance to chat with her later on today and tell her all your thoughts on budgeting. I certainly did yesterday. First item then is adoption of the agenda, moved by Steve McDonald, seconded by Paul Mitchell, that the agenda be adopted as printed and circulated. Are there any issues with the agenda? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Not seeing any. Minutes. Moved by Steve McDonald, seconded by Paul Mitchell, that the minutes from the November 17, 2021 council meeting be adopted as printed and circulated. Any issues with the minutes? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 9 o'clock, Kim Earls from South Central Ontario Region Economic Development Corporation to give us an update on their work. And Kim, you can hear us and see us fine?
I can, thank you.
Right, it's over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to attempt to share my screen so that you can see. I see it's disabled. I'm not sure if you have the presentation in front of you. Maybe.
You can enable that, just one sec.
Okay. I'll just jump in then, and if we can share it. Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Can you guys see that okay?
No, we're seeing a white screen, Kim. There's a few lines on it, but no content.
So, oh, okay, that's not good.
We got it now.
Okay, I don't want to waste your time, so I'll just jump in. So just as a reminder, SCORE is a partnership of 5 counties. We're owned by the counties of Brant, Elgin, Norfolk, Middlesex, and Oxford. And we have 3 strategic priorities. The first being infrastructure supporting economic development. The second is human capital supporting economic development. So that's all things workforce and education related. And the third is sector development. And our sector development focus is agriculture and food value add. And so over the last year and a half, we've been kind of managing our resources to further identified sub-priorities within each of those main priorities. So the first is infrastructure, and over the last while, we've certainly been focusing on the transportation piece for infrastructures that we are proud of. Is we have been advocating for and working with the Ministry of Transportation for quite a number of years, requesting that there be a master transportation plan for southwestern Ontario, and one that is specific to this area and not one that is sort of Toronto facing out or the GTA facing out. And so a few years ago, when we received undertaking that, we were extremely pleased, and we were further very happy that one of our board members and past chair, Stephen Molnar, Mayor of Tillsonburg, was appointed to represent SCORE and the region on the Mayor's Task Force for that planning. So that gives us that direct line into shaping transportation, and that direct communication with the minister's office. And been doing a fair bit of work in community transportation portfolio for a number of years, probably honestly as long as I've been with SCORE, so 10 plus years. We've noted that transportation has been a barrier to workforce attraction and workforce mobility across the region. So people needing to come to work from outside the region, and also folks that need to get from point A to point B within the region. But there didn't seem to be any coordinated efforts across community lines. And so with that, we led the coordination of the Southwest Community Transit. And that is a network of community transit partners across the region and beyond who see the value in having a coordinated approach. And just some of the high level benefits of that is, efficiencies as far as routing alignment, cost savings potential for shared RFPs and shared technologies, and connecting to London and larger centers across the region, so that there's a seamless activity. And the one that's not on here that I think is one of the largest benefits is learning from each other. As community transit in rural areas is relatively new, the opportunity to build on each other's expertise and knowledge has really been invaluable. The other piece that we focused on again in transportation is rail, and specifically short line rail. We focused on the rail line, the Cayuga subline, which is quite size. It runs really from St. Thomas to Portland in Norfolk County, but it does affect manufacturing supply chains across the region, as well as agricultural operations across the region. And so we've been working with the short line rail provider and businesses along that route to hopefully maintain and revitalize that rail as a starting point for promoting rail across the entire region. As you may be aware, over the last year and a half, certainly supply lines and supply chains have been in the news, and having those built-in rail assets certainly give this region an advantage when it comes to that. It's just up to us, I guess, to maintain and promote and do some economic development activities related to that. And the next piece, I'm just going to go into a little bit more detail. The targeted program last year, that we were able to take our, our mapping and all of our routing from our various community transit systems and upload those to job seeker sites. And we work with our workforce planning boards that are across the region. And here in SCORE, we have two. Most applicable to Zorra would be the Elgin Middlesex Oxford Workforce Planning and Development Board. And as you can see, the image on the left shows sort of where all the SCT partners are and kind of a high level where travel goes. And then the image on the right is the actual routing upload from the job seeker site. So that if I was in I was seeking employment potential or elsewhere to go for my employment or for my education, or how might that work for me? And so that was quite a technical undertaking, and one that I'm very proud of, and we hope to build on that in the future.
Kim, your audio is lagging a bit. Maybe if you turn off your video, it might take up like less bandwidth and the audio might come through a bit better.
Perfect. Yep.
I can run the spreadsheet too. It tells me when things. Kim, I can run the PowerPoint, so you just tell me when you want me to advance.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, do you want me to do a stop share then?
Sure, yeah,
Here.
that's great.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all the tech support. I need it. Yeah, so for the human capital piece, again, kind of through the pandemic, we recognized pretty early on issues related to workforce in the pandemic, and specifically our agricultural workforce. And so we had the opportunity to work with members of parliament and others in informing them about some of the issues and opportunities to address those issues in having some of the seasonal agricultural workforce be able to attend the province of Ontario and Canada. And so we really led those discussions and coordinated some early efforts in that area. And in addition to that, we really realized that we needed to focus a lot of our efforts on so with that in mind, we continue to support the Fanshawe Agribusiness Management Program, which is offered in London and Simcoe. And we developed with Conestoga College and the Workforce Planning Boards, Libro, and the County of Brant, the Agricultural Equipment Operator Program. And that started out as a pilot program that was funded by the Canadian Agricultural Partnership and administered through AMAFRA. So we did receive that funding. And it started out as a pilot program, which was 16 weeks. The first intake was January 2021, and the second one, it will actually be January 2022. And that program was so successful, both from a students wishing to enter the program, but also from farmers and agricultural operators hiring right out of the program, that is now going through the process of becoming a full-time certificate program. So that, again, is something we're extremely proud of. And then finally, we worked with Ontario Federation of Agriculture in their Feeding Your Future program. And that, again, was a program where you'll still see lots of activity from Ontario Federation of Agriculture and other partners on the Feeding Your Future program. And SCORE's portion of that was working with commodity organization to create a series of videos highlighting some training or capacity development within each of those commodity organizations. So again, that was quite a big undertaking, and again, all to support that domestic workforce capacity. And then some of the sector development activities that we undertaken is, again, we partnered with the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, and we created a promotional kit under the branding of Always in Season. And certainly in Oxford County, there was lots to celebrate and include in the book. We worked very closely with Rhonda at the Rural Oxford Economic Development Corporation and Meredith at Tourism Oxford to help create some of the inputs for the as well as we worked with 6x16, which is the educational subversion of OFA to create a downloadable flip book, coloring book for youngsters to start to appreciate all that is ag across our region. So those were more promotional sector development projects that we undertook over the last short while. And then in terms of advocacy, we continue to have strong advocacy. We've had 25 delegations with cabinet ministers regarding issues. We collaborated with other organizations such as the Elgin Middlesex Oxford Workforce Development Planning Board on workforce-related issues. And this year we furthered the opportunity to connect with Western Ontario Wardens Caucus in doing some analyzing and dissemination of data that they were able to provide. And that, again, was informed some decisions around economic development. And then we partnered with ROEDC on several projects, including the most recent undertaking, which is the familiarization tour for Oxford County. And so that is something, again, we're very proud to continue in that. And we have provided 12 led other organizations that resulted in successful funding applications for them. So in addition to our funding, so we received 25,000 from the partner counties at the county level, and we were able to leverage that to just over 251,000 last year alone. And then with the letters of support for other organizations, that came to an aggregate total of just over $1 million in investment in the region. And then finally, just a little bit about partnership of SCORE. So, we firmly believe that the partnership creates value. We have an equal say at the board table. Our undertakings are things that are large, regional in nature, and sometimes very complex with a long timeline. So things that potentially a municipality or a county would not want to undertake on their own or would not have the capacity to do so. And yet we're small enough in geographic size to reach consensus and move issues forward and address areas of concern or areas of focus for our region. And again, that ability to attract and leverage funding on a regional scale. And then finally, just a thought that I know certainly our board of directors firmly believes in, and it guides most of our decisions, is we have accomplished a great deal as a 5-county partnership. SCORE is the epitome of good neighbors working together for the good of all. And that's the end of my presentation today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim. Are there any questions from council for Kim on the delegation? Not seeing any, Kim. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye. So next time item isn't for 11 minutes. We could probably squeak in 1 or 2 monthly reports if the, oh, sorry, actually first we should receive that delegation. Moved by Steve McDonald, seconded by Paul Mitchell, that item 7A, SCORE partner update, be received and filed for information purposes only. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Is the chief available?
I just sent her a quick message.
Okay. So, reports from staff, item 8.1A, Fire Department, Memorandum 2021-196 from the Fire Chief regarding monthly fire report for November 2021. Chief, is there anything you want to highlight for council before I ask them for questions?
Good morning. A couple things to highlight. We completed our emergency management training for the year and our tabletop exercise. So we're at this point, we're just preparing for our compliance report. Another item to highlight, there was a promotion in Norwich for the chief, which means we are now recruiting a new training officer for RIFSOC. So we're in the process of that. Our new recruits have been hired and they are set to start today. December 1st is their start date. I've started the process for the Ingersoll Fire Agreement and working on drafting a new agreement. And we have finalized our pre-construction meeting for our metal fab truck in Uniondale and are just finalizing the details of the change order. Last thing I had, we had a holiday parade in Embro on Saturday evening. The Embro firefighters participated. They were excited to share that they had 200 advent calendars to hand out and they ran out before they hit County Road 6. So it was a hit and hopefully it continues.
Any questions from council on the report? Yeah, the parade was great, and it was great to see. I think there was 3 Embro fire vehicles in the parade, right? 3.
Yeah.
And a lot of firefighters too. It was
Yeah.
good. Well done. Moved by Paul Mitchell, seconded by Steve McDonald, that Memorandum 2021-196 from the Fire Chief be received and filed for information purposes only. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thanks, Chief. And, oh, sorry, Paul.
No questions or anything, but I just want to note the passing of retired firefighter Don Adams on November 17th. Don was one of the original 16 Uniondale firefighters, and that passed away at the age of 85. He was also very instrumental in the East Missouri history book, which came out about 10 years ago. So I just wanted to put that on the record.
Thanks for that, Paul. Is Matt there? Yes, he is. 8.2 Recreation Report 2021-202 from the Director of Recreation Facilities regarding monthly departmental activities. Matt, what would you like to highlight for council before I ask them for questions?
Just beyond this report, there was direction from Southwestern Public Health for certain municipalities in Oxford and Elgin County that came out on Monday. Zorra isn't affected by that. We are fielding a few questions from renters that just haven't read that part of the article, and we have posted to social media to try and clarify that for residents with their inquiries. But
Any questions from council on the report? Paul?
A couple of questions, Matt. I note the shinny participation is down in Thamesford. Can we put that down to the fact that the organized leagues are running more this year than they are last year? Or have you got any other thoughts on?
I think generally we're seeing shinny's down a little bit compared to last year this time. I don't know whether that's going to be consistent through the season. Through October we saw higher rates, so it just might have been some kind of unseen factors with other people having busy lives of tournaments or other things going on. Generally, a lot of the people that do utilize shinny also do participate in organized leagues as well, so we'll see how it shakes out through the rest of the year.
Okay, and my other question is with the medical exemption letters and the change in protocol or acceptance of them, are we just, is it just the out of province ones that we're not accepting, or there still are a few? And if you can kind of expand, not only what kind of reaction have you been getting from people with this change?
So these medical exemption letters were specifically the out of the province ones. We still are looking at medical exemptions as they come in and evaluating them against the criteria set out by the province. In this case, we inquired with the province and Southwestern Public Health and got quite clear direction that it should be written by a physician within Ontario. This was kind of, we noticed it when we had 5+ individuals of the same group coming in with very similar letters that just seemed a little bit, they had most of the criteria there, not all of it, and then when we looked at it a little closer, they were from a province physician, and when we delved into that, there's a few physicians through BC and Alberta that have taken a public stance on this and that have started to potentially issue letters. We're not even certain whether these are actually written by those individuals as well. We can't take copies of these, so we can't try to evaluate them after the fact. We have to kind of take them at the door and determine best what we can of whether they're valid or meet the criteria set by the province. And in this case, the province gave us quite clear direction that it should be from within province, and they gave us better or clearer definition of what the exemptions should state on them as well.
Okay. Thanks, Matt.
Anybody else? Questions on the report? Moved by Steve McDonald, seconded by Paul Mitchell, that Memorandum 2021-202 from the Director of Recreation and Facilities be received and filed for information purposes only. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Any questions for Matt not on the report? Thanks, Matt. We can probably get building and drainage done if Mike's there. Memorandum 2021-194 from the Chief Building Official Drainage Superintendent regarding monthly departmental activities. Mike, is there anything you want to highlight for council?
Nothing at this time.
Questions from council for Mike? Paul?
Mike, you're well into the inspection phases for the first of the Maple Leaf property buildings. Have you run into anything unusual or unexpected in that project?
No, the 60 units that are going now, the guys are good to deal with. Everything seems to be moving along well with them.
Anyone else? Moved by Paul Mitchell, seconded by Steve McDonald, that memorandum 2021-194 from the chief building official be received and filed for information purposes only. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Morning. 8.4 Public Works, Memorandum 2021-190 from the Director of Public Works regarding monthly report for the Public Works departmental activities during the month of November. A lot of months in that. Steve, is there anything you want to highlight for council before I ask them for questions?
No, I don't think so.
Questions from council? Paul?
Yeah, curious, Steve, on sand to salt ratio for Embro was 6 1/4 to 1 and Kintor 8.5 to 1. So just wondered if there's a difference in the ice between the two.
No, we quite often stock some salt in around the corner in a sand shed, so we put that into the inventory, so we keep it kind of fresh, refreshed. So the extra salt we had was in the Contour shop, so we added that to what we purchased to bring it up to about the 8% mark.
So 80% is the standard?
Yeah, we try to
around.
hit anywhere between 8 and 10%. Much more than 10, and it gets kind of hard on the back roads for the sanding in the areas that we have to. So
All right. Always curious about the day-to-day operations.
for sure,
Thanks.
yeah.
Anybody else? Questions on the report? Moved by Steve McDonald, seconded by Paul Mitchell, that memorandum 2021-190 from the Director of Public Works be received and filed for information purposes only. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And memorandum 2021-195 from the Director of Public Works regarding a construction update for the Zorra maintenance facility. Steve, is there anything you want to highlight in that for council?
I don't think so. I think pretty much everything's up to date today.
Questions from council on that report? Paul?
Yeah, Steve, I would like to have a site visit. I just wonder if it could be arranged, and I don't know how the rest of council feels about it, but I was thinking maybe after if the main floors are poured by the time we have our first meeting in January, if maybe that afternoon the council could have a site tour, if that's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the plan last I heard was they're hoping to get the floors poured this week sometime, if everything goes smoothly. So then absolutely be no problem. Just got to round you up some PPE to wear while we're on site.
Okay, I would look forward to that.
Sure.
I drive by and take a look, but I want to
Yeah.
get inside.
You don't see the real depth of what's going on until you
Yeah.
walk the site. It's quite interesting, yes, so absolutely.
Okay, we'll work on that after the new year then. Thanks.
And just from my understanding, PPE would be safety shoes, safety glasses, and hard hats?
That's correct, yeah.
No hearing protection?
No.
Any other questions on that report? Moved by Paul Mitchell, seconded by Steve McDonald, that memorandum 2021-195 from the Director of Public Works be received and filed for information purposes only. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And thanks, Steve. And we're at 9:30. Do we have the applicants here? Yeah, we do. Great. So, moved by Steve McDonald, seconded by Paul Mitchell, that the council meeting be adjourned at 9:30 a.m. for the purposes of holding a public meeting pursuant to the provisions of the Planning Act. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And masks on.
Yeah, just a reminder, masks on while the public are in attendance, please.
That's everyone for this, but no other resident kind of secret that you know of? All right then, zone change application ZN5-21-12, Osset Rutledge, submitted by subject lands are located at the northwest corner of Road 74 and the 25th line in the Township of Zorra and are municipally known as 255-207 25th line and 743-179 Road 74. Spencer, what would you like to highlight in your report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, everyone, to members of council, staff, and members of the public here this morning. The application we're dealing with this morning will be familiar to council as the related consent application was approved by the committee in July. What we're looking to do here today is to simply rezone the parcel of land which is currently A2 and add it to the lands currently zoned RE. We'd be putting them in a rural residential zone. The application itself did not generate any comments or concerns from neighbors. Staff are satisfied. I mean, the property itself will remain under the 2-acre threshold, and there are no concerns from staff, and as such, we're recommending today that it be approved.
Any questions from council for the planner? Not seeing any. Does the applicant wish to speak to their application? Do you want to speak to it at all?
Yeah, the only question really, and I think, I don't know if it was Spencer I was talking to a few months ago, is we've done the preliminary survey, and it was basically just the 60 feet by the full depth of the property. We were wondering, you know, now that I've seen him, he's put in the wooden stakes and everything, we were wondering about just potentially tweaking it with permission from the Hossics and council and everything, you know, like 5-10 feet one way or the other. And I think at the time they kind of said that once the survey was completed, that's probably a possibility to do that. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't happen, but it would make a little bit more sense towards the road, just to try and take just, you know, 5 more feet maybe, head towards the Hossics, but.
Did you want me to address? So through you, Mr. Mayor, if there are discrepancies, it could result in the need for another application. Unfortunately, when the survey comes in, the line is the line, so to speak. So we can look at that further, but as far as the application today goes, it speaks to a specific
Okay.
lot
Yeah,
area and
Just
dimension.
procedurally, I want to make sure you understand your options here before council decides on it, because once council decides it's decided, you
Sure.
definitely have to go through another application process then.
Okay.
If we wanted to, if the applicant wanted to do this, there's 2 ways. One, let this happen today and then reapply and go through the whole process again to do it. 2 would be a deferral of this to try and change, clarify, modify what the line is. Correct, Spencer?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, the issue could be with the application for consent, which was already
Oh,
approved,
right.
because the dimensions were set forth in that
So it
application.
would be the whole entire process of application of consent and everything.
That's correct.
Because that line was part of the application of consent as well.
That's correct.
So those are your options.
We don't want to go there.
Okay.
No, that's good.
All right. Are there any questions from council for the applicant? Not seeing any. And there's nobody here from the public to speak to this? Okay. All right. So what's going to happen then is we're going to go out of the public meeting first. We're not done with you then. When we're out of the public meeting, then council is going to vote on your application, okay? Just so you understand what's going to happen. Moved by Paul Mitchell, seconded by Steve McDonald, that pursuant to the Planning Act, the public meeting be adjourned at 9:35 a.m. and the regular meeting of council be called back to order. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And moved by Paul Mitchell, seconded by Steve McDonald, that council of the Township of Zorra approves zone change application ZN 5-21-12 submitted by Tom and Carol Rutledge, whereby the lands described as Lot 6, Concession 12, and Lot 1, Registered Plan Number 41R 5723 East Niziri in the Township of Zorra are rezoned from General Agricultural Zone A2 to Rural Residential Zone RR. Does anybody want to speak to that application? That motion, sorry. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So there is a waiting period for this, but if you circle back with Spencer, he'll make sure you understand all those aspects, but basically that's it, you're approved.
Perfect.
Okay?
Great.
Right. Well, not
Thanks very
perfect,
much,
you wanted the line a little bit different, but it's as good as we could do with what we had in front of us, so.
That's just
All right,
fine. Oh, that's great. Thanks very much.
yeah, no problem, thank you.
Thank you.
And 8.6A then, Corporate Services Department, Memorandum 2021-189 from the Legislative Coordinator Deputy Clerk regarding Local Government Week. Alicia, is there anything you want to highlight in that before I ask council for questions?
So this is just for council's information to inform council of what we did for Local Government Week. We conducted a couple of virtual calls with the schools in Zorra Township, and they went very well. We're not dead set on doing it like this again next year, but we are open to it, and we will keep evaluating alternatives for next year.
Questions for Alicia on that report? I think did you have a question, Paul? Okay. I was just going to say, I think mine's more of a comment actually too, so you go first.
No, I like the new format. I think going to the schools would have some real technical challenges, so that as far as live streaming our meetings, which has become our new standard. And I also think it gives the teachers some options that they can pick and choose from the live streaming of a council meeting and pick out maybe the real interesting parts of it. And I got a feeling some of the in-school ones, that some of the kids would lose an interest partway through. And this may be actually a more efficient way for the teachers to teach this course. So I appreciate the initiative of staff and the mayor to come up with a way of doing something that we feel is important to reach out to the younger members of our community. So just comments on that.
Thanks, but I can take no credit for it. All I did was show up to the meetings that they arranged. I got the fun part, which was talking to the kids. I think this is quite reasonable. This is one of my favorite things is going to the schools and talking to the kids. But I think that, yeah, there's technical challenges now. There's, potentially COVID challenges ongoing. And I think in a lot of ways it was more engaging for the kids to just fire a bunch of questions at staff. To the extent that they actually invited the fire chief back again for another time because they had so many questions for her. And I think that's always good, right? Whenever you leave a public meeting, there's a bunch of people in the vestibule still talking, it's always a good sign. I think likewise when the kids are like, actually, can we have the fire chief back to talk to her again is a good sign that it went well. So I guess all I would say is this was a big change from what we had traditionally done, and staff did it really well, so open to whatever is going to work, obviously with the teachers in the schools as well. So just glad to do it again, just glad to talk to the kids. It was a real boost. So moved by Steve McDonald, seconded by Paul Mitchell, that Memorandum 2021-189 from the Legislative Coordinator Deputy Clerk be received and filed for information purposes only. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And report 2021-199 from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding implementation of a pay administration policy. Don, what do you want to highlight for council on that?
I would leave it open for questions from council, other than to note that this was provided to us by Warden Updegrove as part of our compensation and pay equity study. So it's just been tailored a little bit towards our needs and our practices that we currently have in place.
Questions from council on the report? Paul.
I guess 3 questions, Don. And where do our firefighters, with 62 firefighters, where do they fit in as far, are they considered part-time or casual employees?
We do have our own category on our pay equity grid that lists them out separately, so they're not really included as part of this policy. They still would be subject to any cost of living adjustments on a go-forward basis, as they have been in the past.
Second question is, as far as casual and seasonal employees, do they receive the cost of living increases that the full-time, part-time do?
If they are permanent part-time employees like we do have in recreation and in public works, yes, they would be subject to any cost of living adjustments because they do fall on the grid. Seasonal employees would not be included in that. So we do give seasonal employees, if they return to Zorra for their student employment, we do typically give them a raise for the second year.
Okay. And last one is, it makes mention of salaried staff. Do we have any salaried staff?
Our whole grid is based on an hourly basis, but from a overtime perspective, the managers don't receive overtime, so they would likely be considered salary. We really don't differentiate. That would be the only time that we do.
Thanks.
Any other questions from council? Katie.
And not a question, just a comment. I find anything like this that sort of tidies up any loose ends and firms things up in a document that is very transparent, very helpful. So, yeah, going through the policy itself, I think this is exactly as your report said. This is sort of how we're already functioning. It just sort of solidifies it in policy, makes it very clear for staff and for the public and council. So, yeah, I like it.
The only alteration that I think we likely should make, our past practice has been every 5 years. This is recommending every 4. I would likely say the next one would be carried out in 3 years to avoid having it occur during the last year of a council term. Sometimes it can be a bit of a prickly issue, so I would suggest that the next one be done in 3 years and thereafter every 4 years. And that would just be an amendment that we would make to the policy when we actually put it in our manual.
So, a question and a comment. I wonder if, I guess a first question would be, I'm not knowing exactly where that's written in here, should we pass this as amended to get that done now instead of it coming back again? Just done? Okay. So, maybe, pass that over to Paul. You can chat with Karen there and just as amended or whatever's going to work. But also, I'm just wondering about the wording to amend it. Should we just say in the second year of the term or in the third year of the term or whatever, and then you're good to go from now on, or I don't know.
In the third year of a term would be appropriate.
Okay.
Yep.
So if we say in the third year of a term, and if we say whatever this is going to say, this says as amended, or, yeah. Then that would dot all the I's, cross all the T's. We'd be good. Done. Okay. Any other questions on this? Paul.
Comment that I really appreciated the report and that explained to me how pay levels are adjusted and amended and what the different means, and it ties in really good with the report we're going to get from later on from the consultant. And really, the township is part of the service industry, and the better service we provide, the better we all look and the better staff look. So, and the more open we are as to how we provide that service, the better. So,
anyone else? Don?
There are a few items in that list as on the first page of my report that I've not really followed up on. So it is a good checklist for me. So it should help us moving forward to keep our policies more current and also making sure that we're following an adopted policy. So I think it will definitely help from an administrative point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good, obviously, from an administrative point of view, but I think the combination of, as I think, Paul and Katie have said, council to actually formally review the policy on this and adopt the policy and make it transparent to residents that there is a policy and that council's considered it and adopted it, and that staff know that council has considered it and adopted it, and so residents, staff, council, all on the same page. If anybody wants to change it, that's where you change it, but that it has been formally reviewed and considered is a good thing, and I couldn't agree more with putting it like in the third year of a term, so you don't have first year counselors trying to evaluate something like this, and equally so you don't have it in the fourth year of a term and unnecessarily politicize it. So I think this is a good thing that enables staff to go and do the work without having to come back to council to look for direction every time they need to do it. Anybody else on this? Moved by Paul Mitchell, seconded by Steve McDonald, that council adopt pay policy 300-40 amended in Memorandum 2021-199 from the Chief Administrative Officer. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And 8.6C, report 2021-200 from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding 2022 preliminary new assessment forecast. Don, is there anything you want to highlight in that?
No, just to clarify, so the $270,000 will be a starting point for council when they consider the 2022 budget. So rather than being behind the 8 ball, there is $270,000 in additional revenue that will be available. Some of that is already taken up by an approved position that we've hired for going into 2022. And any increases that do come out of the closed meeting item would also be taken out of that 270. So typically you see municipalities behind the eight ball after those types of adds to the budget. We're not starting out at that point, fortunately, in 2022.
Questions from council on the report? Paul?
There, again, no questions, just a comment, and it's great to see we've got a bit of cushion, as Don said, to go into budget deliberations, but I think with the inflation at 4.4% and rising, that not only the wages, but a lot of other operating expenses are going to eat up that $270,000 in a hurry.
Anyone else? Moved by Steve McDonald, seconded by Paul Mitchell, that memorandum 2021-200 from the Chief Administrative Officer be received and filed for information purposes only. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And report 2021, report 2021-201 from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding Assessment Review Board final decision on Wellington County gravel pit quarry appeals. Don, what would you like to highlight in that?
Just that, as council's aware, we have been working with Wellington County, TAPMO, and reviewing the situation. From MPAC's intervention in and seeking leave to appeal, it seems like it is something that's not, it wasn't anticipated by our group. So there is some concern in my discussions with other financial people that are involved in the appeals. So we are not very pleased that MPAC is siding, or appears to be siding with the industry in taking away some of the hard-fought gains that municipalities would see as a result of the Assessment Review Board decisions. So what we're suggesting is that we have letters sent to MPAC's Board of Directors, and we would also forward that to TAPMO and any other interested municipalities for support on a go-forward basis.
Any questions for Don on this? Ron?
Just a comment. That report was a little hard to read, far too many acronyms. And I just wonder if the public can work their way through that. So maybe an index next time?
Anyone else? I guess I would just add a comment then. At the last TAPMO executive meeting, Puslynch Mayor and TAPMO Chair, Wellington County Councillor, James Seeley invited some people from MPAC to, Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, to the meeting to speak to this. And they largely said that the reason they were appealing was they wanted to seek clarity. The executive was quite confused by that because we felt like the appeal and the decision brought clarity. What was the need for more clarity? But anyway, that's what MPAC says where they're coming from. Mayor Seeley is very, let me choose my words carefully here, very proactive in this. He really is frustrated by it on behalf of Puslynch, Wellington, and TAPMO members, and really wants to go hard at this to try and get it resolved. So I really think that any support that we can give him as Zorra Township is going to be huge. I know that when Don has been working with Wellington County staff who are providing the staff resources to TAPMO right now, that's a really good relationship. I think that TAPMO's in a really good place right now in terms of the executive leadership and the staff support and the collaboration between the municipalities. So all that is to say, I cannot support this enough. And I really would just say, Don, any support that you need from council on this and going forward in terms of, strong motions and resolutions to direct this, I would be happy to support. In all the meetings that TAPMO got with MPPs and ministers, they were generally quite supportive of this and openly supportive of it. So I think there's a real opportunity here between, in the Venn diagram of TAPMO being effective and ministers and MPPs being receptive. I think we're in a real opportunity window here. So we should be taking every opportunity to try and drive this home.
And I thought after the meeting, if council supports this, we would jointly write a letter signed by the mayor that would go to MPAC's Board of Directors.
And I think we should maybe consider, we should talk about it with TAPMO maybe, and maybe consider some kind of press release or something to try and really escalate this. I think, as I say, a lot of them, every single minister that we spoke to was supportive. So I think there might be a window here to get out in the public and make people understand that every dollar that an aggregate pit doesn't pay in taxes is a dollar that other residents do pay in taxes. There's no free ride. So somebody is, when somebody gets a property tax cut, somebody else is paying for that property tax cut. So anybody else on this before I read the motion? Moved by Ron Forbes, seconded by Katie Davies, that council direct staff to seek rationale from MPAC's Board of Directors for the decision seeking leave to appeal the ARB's decision to divisional court, and that the resolution be forwarded to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO, and Top Aggregate Producing Municipalities of Ontario, TAPMO, members for support. Anybody want to speak to that? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And that's probably a decent time to take a break, maybe. Come back at 10 past 10. We're making good progress, I think. Everybody's good with that? We'll come back here at 10 past 10. Let us know when we're off. No, when, when we're, okay, thank you. All right, so 10:12, and I'll call the meeting back to order, and try and stop laughing. We're at item 8.6E, Report 2021-204 from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding Beachville District Museum funding agreement with the Township of Southwest Oxford. Dawn, what would you like to highlight in that report?
I really don't have anything to highlight other than any questions from council.
Questions from council on the report? Steve?
No question, just a comment on where this came from. It's basically a matter of fairness, as the board for the museum decided. It's been brought up in the past. Now, the Beachville Museum is in Southwest Oxford territory. It is their building, their property. That's where the 60/40 came from originally. The curator's salary, she's the only full-time person we have. Everybody else is part-time or student or whatever you want to call them. And we thought that it would be better to, because she's done so much work in the last few years, to bring the museum into focus with Zorra and Southwest Oxford. It's not just the Beachville Museum. We thought it's only fair we pay equally for her salary, so that's where this came from.
Anyone else? Questions on the report? Paul?
I guess my question to Steve is, this is a one separate, that this isn't a step towards the whole operation being 50/50. This is just this one part.
Yeah, it's just chopped for this one little block, her salary. I mean, it is Southwest Oxford's building, their property, blah, 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 but no, it's just, she's doing an equal job for both of our townships, and I think it's only respectful that we pony up.
Anyone else? Ron?
Yeah, just further to what Paul's question there. Yeah, that 50/50, or the agreement between the two townships, if it did go to the next step, as you're asking about, as far as a full 50/50 on that agreement, then if the actual operating costs were brought into that, it'd mean another, depending on budget, somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 for Zorra Township, if that remainder was brought into that. So my guess is some days it probably will end up that. Don't want to play our cards, but I guess I already have. I would say that's coming forward. But to put it in perspective, as Steve said, they do own the building, and in the last several years, there's been a new house, new water system, paved driveway, and most recently, radon mitigation equipment all put into the basement of the building. So it's costing Southwest Oxford some money to keep that facility up.
Anybody else? Questions on this? Moved by Steve McDonald, seconded by Katie Davies, that council approve a change to the funding agreement for the Beachville District Museum whereby Zorra would pay 50% of the curator's salary, and that council direct staff to bring back an amended agreement to the December 15th, 2021 council meeting, and that the remainder of the agreement remain unchanged, and that this resolution be forwarded to Southwest Oxford Council. Anybody want to speak to that? I would say, I guess, for myself, I think this is absolutely fair. I think in terms of the work of the curator, regardless of the building and what may ever happen with that in the future, in terms of the work of the curator, it's 50/50. I think she certainly views her role, and there's plenty of evidence to suggest that she views her role as curating, historical artifacts from the combined townships. I don't think there's a 60/40 split in her mind of what she does, and this cost is really to be split, in my opinion, regardless of where the building physically is. Her work is that, so I'm enthusiastically supportive of this. Anybody else? Steve?
Sidebar, as sitting on the curator's contract committee, we didn't negotiate or increase, and we also jumped from a 2-year contract to a 4-year contract with her agreement, so that's a big plus for us.
All's in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And 8.6F, to close an unopened roadway allowance and to authorize transfer of the property to Dwayne Veenstra. That's all that it says there, but anyway. Was this your report, Karen, or Alicia? Yeah. Yeah, is there anything you want to highlight in that, Karen, or?
I don't think so. Council had a similar application in Beachville come through, I think about 6 months ago. Just kind of some administrative work that needs to be done with some of these old road allowances. So very similar to the one that you would have previously saw. I apologize, that map is kind of squishy, but hopefully you can understand what I'm trying to get across there.
Any questions from council on this? Moved by Katie Davies, seconded by Ron Forbes, that council approve permanently closing the road allowance not traveled designated as Part 2 on Plan 41R-7499 North Oxford in the Township of Zorra and identified as part of PIN 0009902211, and that council direct township staff to bring back the necessary bylaws once the required reference plan has been completed. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Nine, correspondence requiring direction. So 9A, correspondence from QP regarding OMER's investment performance review. I do have a motion here. I'm going to read this once because it's long. Any questions, I guess, before I read the motion? Questions for staff of understanding or anything? All right. Moved by Ron Forbes, seconded by Katie Davies. That the Township of Zorra Council call for an immediate, comprehensive, and independent third-party expert review of OMER's investment performance and practices over the past 10 years conducted by the OMER's pension plan sponsors and stakeholders, and that such a review would, at minimum, 1, compare OMER's plan level and asset class level performance to other comparable defined benefit pension plans and funds, OMER's internal benchmarks and market-based benchmarks. 2, examine OMER's decision-making processes around the timing of various investment decisions. 3, assess the risk management policies and protocols that were in place and determine if they were followed and or if they were sufficient to protect the plan from undue risk. 4, assess whether the disclosures provided to the OMER's administrative and sponsorship boards were sufficient evidence to allow the boards to respond appropriately and in a timely manner. 5, examine executive compensation, investment fees, and investment costs at OMER's in comparison to other major defined benefit pension plans and funds. 6, examine other relevant issues identified by the third-party expert review. 7, make recommendations for changes at OMER's to ensure stronger returns moving forward. 8, issue their final report and recommendations in a timely manner. 9, publicly release its full report and recommendations to ensure that it is available to OMER's sponsors, stakeholders, and plan members. And that the Township of Zorra Council further calls on the OMER's Administrative Corporation to 1, provide all requested data, documentation, and information required of the review panel to fulfill its mandate. 2, establish a step-by-step plan with OMER's sponsors and stakeholders to implement any recommendations set out in the review report. Anybody want to speak to that? Paul?
Yeah, I think this is something we should be concerned about because the strength of this pension plan affects, I believe, previous president, future employees of the township. And I attended a session at the 2019 AMO conference, which was put on by the Municipal Employers Pension Centre of Ontario, short form MEPCO. And that organization was created by AMO to safeguard municipal employees' pensions. And at that time, the presentation, they were voicing concerns about investment decisions that OMER's had made over the last decade that they thought were not wise decisions and were putting the future of the pension plan at risk. And now CUPE, though I'm not a big fan of unions, and especially public unions, I think CUPE is doing what unions are supposed to do, and they're speaking up on behalf of their membership. And what I read in this report was that not only is the OMERS plan underperforming relative to other comparable plans, but they also have some serious transparency issues as far as letting their membership and the stakeholders know what they're doing and what the results are. So I'm not 100% comfortable passing this motion right now. I would like to know what AMO's position is on this as and what their concerns are and what they're doing about it. But I'm not totally against this passing motion, but I'd just like to see what other council members what their thoughts are before we vote.
Anyone else? Steve?
Just a personal comment. When I got to the second paragraph in that letter, I have my own retirement fund, but I have my own investment portfolio. And I do know from 2020, yeah, the market crashed in the first half of the year, but it rebounded substantially in the second half. And for OMERS to post a net loss of almost 3% is almost unfathomable in my mind. So, yeah, I think they need to be checked out and see what they're investing in. And there's got to be some oversight there. You should not have lost money in 2020.
Anyone else? I'm supportive of this. I think it's reasonable. They're asking for a report. It's pretty detailed in what they want. I think it's clear from the fact that this shows up as correspondence to asking for the report that they feel they need support in getting the report. I guess if this was in front of our council for our staff to report on a thing that we do, I would say absolutely, yeah, provide a report on what we do. I'm sure there's political implications to this as well, but I just think they're asking for a report on what they do. Provide the report. And a third-party audit, especially of financial things, is absolutely, common practice, I think. The fact that you need political support for a third-party audit of financial performance is almost concerning in and of itself, really. Like, we do it every year as a matter of, we do it because we legally have to, but it's also just good practice. Like, all corporations do it. So to me, I have no problem supporting this. And as you pointed out, Paul, OMERS is, I think, for in terms of attracting and retaining municipal staff, it's one of the main strengths of attracting and retaining that is that benefit of a assumed robust pension when you're done. So I'll be supporting this. Anybody else before I call the vote? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And boards and committees. So what I have is one motion to receive A and B for information purposes only. Paul, you'll give us a verbal update on Upper Thames. And does anybody want to speak to the ZRAC agenda or minutes? Sorry, Paul. Okay. All right, then. I'll leave this then until after you give your updates on both, Paul, in case anybody wants to change it.
Upper Thames Board meeting November 23rd. We're still meeting by Zoom. First agenda item was a letter from Mayor Strathey in St. Mary's voicing his concern about sewage overflows in London during the recent heavy rains and urging Upper Thames to take a role in dealing with that. The board is going to receive a report in January about the situation in London and other municipalities in the watershed dealing with the sewage overflows and what infrastructure is being done or built to deal with it. And it was pointed out that the Ministry of Environment and Conservation and Parks regulates municipal water systems and the Upper Thames. Although we do have some influence, we can't lower the boom on them. Second item was an update on the transition plan for the Conservation Act changes. And the Upper Thames staff will be meeting with all municipalities, including Zorra, as to what programs are delivered on a non-core basis. And Tracy Annett, the general manager, will be meeting with with Oxford County staff and council as well. It's still unclear whether in the Oxford County's situation, whether those contracts will be with the county or with the individual lower tiers. We reviewed the fee schedule for 2022, and basically there's a 5% increase on most permits and facilities. A few exceptions, but that's 5% is the standard. We set the board of directors meeting dates for next year. There was an interesting report on potential removal of a weir in Stratford, and the costs of taking out that weir would be shared by the city of Stratford and by various grants, including WECI, if they get those grants approved. I found that interesting because of what's a possible future situation with the dam in Harrington. But what it comes down to is it's the municipality foots the bill, less whatever they can get in grants, and it's the municipality that makes the final decision on whether this comes out or not. We reviewed our investment policy and made some adjustments to the portfolio based on advice from our financial advisors. The Section 28 report, there were 2 permits issued in Zorra. One was for municipal drain on line 43, which comes under another acronym, WASCOB, which stands for Water and Sediment Control Basin Project. And the other permit was for a wetland restoration on line 31. We had a budget update for the 2022 budget, as staff continues to fine-tune it. The first draft that they brought in the month before was for a 6.6% increase to the municipal levy. They're now targeting a 3.5% increase. And the next draft will be coming to the board in January, and we'll be voting on it for final approval at the February AGM. So that there is no meeting in December, next meeting is in January.
Any questions for Paul on that report, that update? ZRAC.
ZRAC also met on November 23rd. The community membership report was deferred. The staff had met with proponents of the idea, and the proponents are consulting further with various community organizations. We had a discussion about the ZRAC goals for 2022, and we tied that in with the Recreation, Arts, and Culture Master Plan update. And the chair will bring a list of goals to the January meeting. I believe she emailed a list yesterday to the committee members. We reviewed the draft rental rates. There was very little response from the committee members. There was one member objected to the increase in the family pool passes, but there was no resolutions or anything coming out of the committee. They're looking for volunteers for the cultural mapping project. So far there's one member interested, and there was a bit of discussion regarding the information items on the agenda, and the chair of ZRAC is sending a letter of congratulations to the Zorra Splash Pad committee for having reached their fundraising goal. So that was the latest ZRAC meeting.
Katie.
Quick question. The cultural mapping exercise, you said that there has been one volunteer recruited. Is that from the ZRAC committee, or is that from the greater community?
As far as I understand, it's from Sam Coughlin from the committee. And I don't know, and there wasn't any mention of anybody else has come forward to help out with that project.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Paul on that? So just so I understand, they received, the ZRAC just received and filed the report on the possible new fees.
Yeah, I don't think we even passed a resolution. We just discussed it, and
Okay.
there was nobody up in arms, but the one issue, there was a bit of a comment, but there was no resolution to say that we think this is good, or we think this, there was really very little feedback.
Okay. I should have read this in more detail in the minutes, but did they didn't do anything? No receive and file, nothing, just, okay. All right, okay. Any other questions on either of those updates then? Moved by Katie Davies, seconded by Ron Forbes, that items 10A through B be received and filed for information purposes only. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And 11, information items. So what I have in front of me is moved by Ron, well, I have a motion to receive and file A and B together and just receive and file. Just before I read it, everybody good with that? Anybody want to do anything different? Questions for staff on either of those before I?
Just a little background on about the dead stock issue, and that's come to light in, it used to be you actually got paid for your dead stock, and now you pay, in some cases, a fairly hefty fee to get rid of your dead stock. And a couple of months ago, Atwood, which I don't know if they cover this area or not, because we have the facility over near Hickson, so I don't think Zorra farmers are too directly affected. Anyway, they cut the area that they covered in half, and all of a sudden a lot of farmers had to come up with alternate ways, and there are alternate ways of dealing with dead stock, and this program is just to help fund some of those facilities that farmers are going to need to deal with this issue.
I found one of those alternate ways of dealing with dead stock one day on a hike in Wildwood. Anyway.
That's not a government-approved
Yeah.
way, I don't think.
No, it was not.
I know what
Absolutely.
you're talking about.
Anybody else before I read this motion? Moved by Ron Forbes, seconded by Katie Davies, that items 11A through B be received and filed for information purposes only. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. No unfinished business, no notices of motion. So bylaws, items of community interest, and then closed session at 11, so we'll probably take a break just before that. Bylaws. Moved by Katie Davies, seconded by Ron Forbes, that bylaws 75-21, 76-21, 77-21, 78-21, 79-21, and 80-21 be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. And further, that the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to sign the same and affix the corporate seal thereto. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And that just made Diane our new Director of Finance, so thank you and congratulations. Happy to have you here. All joking aside, I do encourage you to go and talk with Diane, because it's just good human-to-human conversations, but also because she's got quite a hill to climb for us now between now and she's thinking, March-ish time frame for a budget. I think she's professional enough to know that if she hears from each one of you, she's not going to make a budget for each one of you, but I'm sure it would be valuable to her to hear where your headspaces are at in terms of where she's going with a budget. And I think it would be good for each of you to have a conversation with her and hear where her head is at in terms of how she prepares a budget. it's certainly, I think, you know, a tremendous opportunity for us to have somebody here who is new to us, but also understands, you know, not only our municipal budget process, but in an Oxford County context. New ways, I think, are always welcome here in Zorra. You know, if council doesn't like your new ways, they can always just vote no to them. But that's how it's supposed to work, right? You're supposed to bring us those new ideas, and then we decide, is that going to work for us? So, so again, I would just say thanks for coming. Congratulations, and we really look forward to working with you on this budget and all the budgets after that, and certainly welcome any new and creative ways you want to try and save residents money and increase services. Is always good. Is there anything you wanted to say, Diane?
I just want to thank you for the warm welcome. It's been a very nice place. The people have been very warm, and I appreciate of everybody coming out and bringing me into the township with open arms. And I look forward to working with everyone and hoping to help you be forward-thinking. I know this council is very much forward-thinking, and I enjoy that concept that you have, and I hope I can bring ideas forward to help you continue to grow and move forward.
Thanks.
Okay.
So, items of community interest, calendar. So when I look at the calendar, I see county council next week, which should be passing to the budget. And I don't see any other events before we're back here on the 15th. Am I missing anything?
Friday night this week, turning on the Christmas lights at the Beachville Museum.
Oh.
Turning on the Christmas lights at the Beachville Museum on Friday night at 6:30. Be there at 6 for hot chocolate and a few snacks. Outdoor event, so we're not under any new restrictions that I'm aware of at this point in time. Bring your kids and grandkids and great-grandkids or whatever you have.
So, sorry, you said that was at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock on Friday night. Anybody else have anything that I missed? Thank you. We need to get back to a place where you're sitting here and you can just elbow me or kick me or whatever. So we have closed coming up at 11. I think we'll just go into break until we'll come back in here like at a couple minutes to 11. Make sure we're all on and ready to rock then. So we'll adjourn until like 2 minutes to 11 or something. Okay? I'll call the meeting back to order, and we're going to go into closed session now for anybody watching the video. When we come back out of closed session, all that will be left is a few procedural bylaws and adjournment, so you won't be missing anything after that if you want to stop watching now. So moved by Ron Forbes, seconded by Katie Davies. The council move into a closed meeting at 11 a.m. pursuant to section 239.2B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And you'll let me know. So we're back from closed session, and I have moved by Katie Davies, seconded by Ron Forbes, that bylaw 81-21, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held December 1st, 2021, be read a first, second, and third time this December 1st, 2021, and further that the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to sign the same and affix the corporate seal thereto. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And moved by Ron Forbes, seconded by Katie Davies, that this session of council be now adjourned and herewith closed at 12:15 p.m. and that the council deviate from section 4.1 of procedural bylaw 05-04 as amended and schedule the next meeting of council for December 15th, 2021 at 4 p.m. in the council chambers at the Township Municipal Office. So the reason for that is that that next agenda is looking quite stacked with several planning applications, delegations, closed session report, I can't remember what else, but so we talked about that it would potentially run up against the time limit, and should we change it to a day meeting? Some planning notices have already been sent out, so those are scheduled times already for people to come. So it still has to be an evening meeting, but pulling it ahead to 4 instead of 6 would allow council to have the debate that it may want to have on those issues. Who knows? We go like today, maybe we'll be done. But anyway, I think it's.
And we'll bring in a snack for supper too. Just nothing major, but just a snack.
So is that? Like I'm gonna have to rejig my family schedule a little bit to make that happen. But I mean, I'll make that happen. But is that gonna, like, we normally don't discuss this part at all, but is everybody gonna be able to make that work? 4 o'clock?
We'll break probably about 5:15 for a quick slice of pizza or something, so.
Everybody's good?